5 years after the launch of Tsushima, Ghost of Yotei has finally made it to PS5 consoles worldwide, but while the game's also been acclaimed, it's also been garnishing a lot of controversy. So the biggest questions are, is it worth it or is it woke? Now, I've had the chance to play Yotei over the last couple days, and I've got to say, it's really fun. You play as this samurai named Atsu, who has to stop this evil samurai lord named Saito and his group of henchmen, the Yotei 6, from taking over Japan. Now, this game is very different from Tsushima in that, first of all, you're not fighting against Mongols like in the first game. You're fighting against another samurai who's rebelling against the shogun. And honestly, not only does the game look a lot more gorgeous than Tsushima, but it also retains the unique art style that Tsushima had. You also have a much richer open world and a much better combat experience. As a matter of fact, speaking of the open world looks extremely breathtaking. I mean, the snow looks very realistic, and even when you're galloping through fields, you almost feel like the trees look realistic too. Another cool thing is that you get to hunt down wild animals. Of course, bounty systems return from the previous game, but one of the biggest differences is that you don't have sword stances in the game. Instead, the weapon system and just the combat is much more mercenary style. For example, as you progress through the game, Atsu can learn various weapons and techniques. Of course, she starts with the wolf blade, which is her father's katana, but she ends up getting other styles like a yaru and dual katana styles, which come in extremely handy when dealing with enemies of other weapon types. I will also say, in terms of combat, the game definitely has a much more refined combat system that is a bit more easier to use than Tsushima. You could seamlessly switch between weapons and weapon stances the same way you could switch between Jin stances in Ghost of Tsushima, but at the same time, it's a completely different experience from the first game. There are also a bunch of other fun mechanics, including the ability to throw enemy weapons at your opponents, which makes it a lot easier to knock them off guard and can result in instant one-hit kills depending on difficulty and depending on who you're facing. Bigger enemies, of course, take a bit more effort to take down. It also wouldn't be a Ghost game without classic stealth gameplay, which involves you assassinating targets or in some cases performing critical strikes, making it a lot easier to navigate certain environments by taking down enemies one by one. I will say that the stealth system is a lot more refined than in the first game, as I always had issues trying to take down enemies without alerting others when I was playing Tsushima. Overall, I think it's a much better experience than the previous game, and you can tell that Sucker Punch really tried to make it accessible to new fans of the series. Also, in terms of PS5 performance, it never had any issues in quality mode. I've yet to try it in performance mode, but I honestly am enjoying playing it in quality mode because even though it's more of a 30 FPS frame rate, you can tell it's very polished because there were very few stutters and I didn't really see any frame rate drops. I also want to mention that compared to the first game, the story is much more non-linear. So when you take down the Yotei 6, there's not really a set order you have to take them down in. Like, for example, I started with the Oni and started going after the Kitsune, which is pretty cool because you can go vice versa if you want to. I mean, in the first game, you could not take Koden Khan down early on. You had to take down his generals and everyone loyal to him before you got to him. Also, the way that they do all the samurai combat in this game is kind of like the final battle from Jin Sakai's tale in Ghost of Tsushima. I mean, just the way that the combat flows is incredible, and you could really tell that devs put a lot of time into polishing it. I will say that during my initial playthrough, I had a lot of trouble with parries, as you have to time them exactly right in order to actually execute them. It kind of reminded me of the parry system in Lies of P, but with way less difficulty. However, once you get enemy timing down and you listen to the sound of attacks, it becomes a lot easier. I think this is really cool, especially because this game is more of the Japanese underworld, and it also involves a lot more different vibes than Tsushima did. It's also, just like in the first game, not entirely based on historical events, as just like Jin Sakai, Atsu is not a real person.
My lord, the female Ashigaru. Not sure their presence sends the right message.
Now, speaking of all the controversy and stuff, I do want to mention that even though the game seems like it's pushing some extremist ideals, the fact that women were ostracized from being samurai, it's kind of historically accurate. I actually did some digging on the web while I was playing the game, and I found out that during the era in which this game took place, 1603, which was the start of the Edo period, women weren't strictly forbidden from being samurai, but their role was much more restricted in home defense. In fact, it was during the Edo period that women were expected to live repressed and subjugated lives and had a lot more restriction of movement. Although there were some exceptions to this in cases where home defense was necessary. So you didn't really see women fighting on the front lines. I mean, it was an extremely rare thing during that time period. But I will say that so far I'm not having a problem with the story. I'm not seeing any crazy political beliefs. So I think so far I like what I'm seeing. Now, in terms of the game's main controversy and whether or not it's woke, a lot of this has to do with behaviors from the devs, as well as who they chose for the protagonist. Without getting too much into it, it's an individual by the name of Erika Ishii who plays Atsu. I will say that it's an interesting casting choice, especially just given some activist backgrounds that this individual had. And also, the dev team seemed rather interesting from the photos. I haven't done enough research to know whether or not it's true that the dev team had a unique kind of demographic, especially considering that a lot of times photos can be taken out of context. But another interesting thing I've heard is a controversy surrounding its now former senior dev, Drew Harrison. For context, Drew Harrison worked as a senior developer on Yotei, but was recently fired following some controversial postings about the unaliving of a well-known conservative figure by the name of Charlie Kirk. It's unfortunate anytime someone gets let go, anytime controversy gets stirred up, but even though the game was already controversial because of them choosing to use a female protagonist in Yotei, it already garnered even more controversy due to Harrison's comments. Now, I gotta say, I'm not gonna give any opinions on this just because, I mean, this is a safe space, but it's just unfortunate with the situation. And as if that wasn't crazy enough, it was revealed that two of Yotei's writers had previously worked on Dragon Age the Veilguard, which was a massive commercial flop last year, and was heavily criticized for its political narrative, as well as just the treatment that its devs gave the game. This seems to be a big problem in the industry with companies like Sweet Baby Inc., and it's gotten so crazy that Sony is officially ending their partnership with them, just due to all the backlash and all the gamers speaking out. It's unfortunate, especially given these times that we live in. I have heard in terms of the game's sales figures that it's already managed to sell over 1 million copies so far, but I'm hearing from various sources, including a certain YouTuber by the name of Smash JT, that the numbers could possibly be inflated. In my opinion, I think it's too early to tell, so we're gonna have to wait and see until the monthly sales figures come out for Yotei. So far, it seems like the game's doing pretty well, and based off of me playing it, I haven't seen anything wrong with it, but I'm still playing through it, so it may still be too early to tell. But I will say it's a very rich experience, and it's a game that I'd highly recommend for anyone wanting to get back into the Japanese setting, and anyone who loves Assassin's Creed, or even stealth-style gameplay, or anyone who loves Tsushima. If I were to score it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably give it a solid 8 out of 10. While it's a game that I can't get 100% into, it's a title that I've definitely invested a lot of attention in. I love the combat. I think it's an overall major improvement from Tsushima, but just all the controversy surrounding it makes it me very weary. Now, do I think this game could win Game of the Year at the Game Awards? Absolutely not. And I'm only saying that because the debate's going to be hard this year because we've got so many other good games like Death Stranding 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and Expedition 33, as well as Donkey Kong Bonanza. So it's going to be tough to say. But I will say it just seems like its critic scores aren't there. Either way, I think Yotei has a good chance at getting nominated at the Game Awards. Do I think it's woke? I don't think the game is, but I think the devs were pushing certain ideals that were very questionable that could have led to this game failing if it escalated any further. But either way, this is just tentative. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see the long-term results of all this PR campaign, as well as just some deeper digging into Yotei's lore. But I honestly enjoy it so far, but I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Do you think Yotei's woke? Are you guys planning on playing the game? Are you guys boycotting it? And do you guys think it has a chance of winning some awards at the Game Awards? Let me know in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell so you never miss a video, and give it a thumbs up so YouTube shares it with more people. Until then, thanks for watching. I've got some more content headed your way later this week. Take care.